In a world that moves at the speed of a swipe, a single emotional impulse can shatter relationships, damage reputations, or reshape the course of our lives. One brief moment of anger, jealousy, or fear can leave a trace that lingers for years. We scroll through social media, absorb endless opinions, react before we think, and often discover too late that our emotions were steering the wheel while we were only passengers. Now imagine a mind steady enough to witness chaos without becoming part of it. Picture an inner strength so calm that no insult, no pressure, and no uncertainty could disturb your peace unless you allowed it. This isn't cold detachment, it's clarity, it's freedom. Today, we turn to daily Stoic practices that can help you master your reactions, reclaim your choices, and live with stability rooted in your truest values. There is a quiet truth that sits beneath the noise of everyday life, a truth suggesting that strength and peace are not found by bending the world to our desires, but by shaping the way we respond to what the world brings. This idea has carried through centuries, crossing cultures, wars, and revolutions, and it appears again and again whenever humans search for freedom without running away from life. It is an invitation to look inward, not as an escape, but as a path toward clarity. From here, we turn to the realization that peace is not the result of perfect circumstances. It is the result of inner discipline. Even in times of prosperity, the mind can be troubled by anxiety, comparison, and desire. And even in the harshest conditions, someone can find stillness by directing attention toward thoughts they can control rather than events they cannot. It is this shift in focus that Stoic philosophy teaches, not as theory, but as a practice of being fully alive. Think about how every era has its own version of chaos. The ancient world struggled with invasions, hunger, and unpredictable rulers. Our modern world struggles with information overload, social expectations, and the subtle pressure to perform, to prove, to constantly respond. Yet beneath these differences lies one unchanged human challenge: how to meet external turbulence without surrendering internal balance. Now imagine the mind as a space no one else can enter unless invited. History reveals countless examples of people who remained centered even when they held no power over their surroundings. They did not build peace by controlling others, but by understanding themselves. This is why the writings of Seneca and Marcus Aurelius continued to resonate. They remind us that clarity doesn't depend on silence around us, but on silence within us. There is an idea woven through ancient texts suggesting that suffering often begins, not with reality, but with our interpretation of reality. A harsh comment becomes painful when we attach meaning to it. A setback becomes unbearable when we label it as failure rather than a step. Events themselves are neutral until we shape them with our thoughts. And if thoughts shape experience, then strength comes from examining them rather than blaming the world for how we feel. From this perspective, inner peace becomes a form of craftsmanship. Just as a sculptor shapes stone, we shape our responses. The more intentional we become, the smoother and stronger the sculpture of our character grows. This is not achieved overnight. The Stoics believed it is built through small, daily decisions, choosing patience instead of anger, curiosity instead of fear, perspective instead of panic. Every choice becomes a tool refining the mind. But there's another layer worth contemplating. If peace begins within, why do so many people chase it through external achievements? Why do we believe that more success, more attention, or more certainty will finally quiet the mind? Perhaps because it is easier to seek solutions outside than to confront the restless thoughts within. Yet ancient wisdom suggests that the harder path looking inward is the only one that truly works. Reflect for a moment on the times you felt most unsettled. Was it because the world was chaotic, or because your thoughts magnified the chaos? Consider how two people facing the same challenge can react entirely differently. One collapses into worry, the other sees opportunity to adapt. Their circumstances are identical, but their interpretations are not. And if interpretation determines experience, then peace belongs to the one who has learned to master interpretation. From here, we turn to the awareness that inner strength is not about ignoring emotion or pretending to be unaffected. It is about choosing how to respond after the first wave of emotion passes. You cannot stop anger or fear from arising, but you can decide what comes next. The Stoics saw emotions not as enemies, but as signals, reminders to pause, examine, and choose with intention. This pause is the birthplace of freedom. Think of it like a traveler standing before a fork in the road. One path reacts impulsively, driven by frustration, fear, or pride. The other path waits, observes, and chooses a response aligned with values instead of impulses. Which path you take shapes not only your day, but your character. And character, the Stoics believed, is the true measure of success in life. This philosophy endures because, despite modern offices and smartphones, the human mind hasn't evolved as fast as technology. Our instincts are still easily pulled by fear, desire, and distraction. Stoic wisdom remains relevant because it strengthens the mind, teaching us how to live clearly and steadily in any era. Another question emerges. If peace is an inner practice, does that mean we must withdraw from the world to protect it? The Stoics rejected that idea. They lived fully engaged lives as emperors, advisors, teachers, and citizens. Peace was not a retreat. It was a way to show up stronger, clearer, and more grounded. True inner strength does not hide. It participates without becoming overwhelmed. Now imagine what it feels like to walk through life with that kind of steady presence. Conversations become lighter because you no longer depend on others for validation. Challenges become manageable because fear no longer dictates your choices. Success becomes more meaningful because it aligns with your values instead of your insecurities. Peace stops being a reward and starts being a practice. So we return to the central question. What does this reveal about the way we live today? It suggests that our struggles are not signs of weakness, but invitations to grow. It shows that life will always bring misinterpretations, conflicts, and loss, but it also offers the tools to meet them with clarity. It reminds us that we don't need to change the world to feel safe. We only need to change how we meet the world. If peace grows from within, then mastering the inner world isn't optional, it's essential. It forms the foundation of living by intention rather than impulse. From this point, we begin exploring the origins of self-control and how it has guided humans throughout history to cultivate a steady, resilient mind. To understand where the Stoic idea of self-control was born, we must step back into a world shaped by uncertainty. Ancient Greece and Rome were not centers of calm philosophy, but turbulent societies marked by wars, shifting rulers, political assassinations, and fragile fortunes. In those times, even the most powerful leaders could lose everything overnight. Armies changed allegiance, diseases swept through crowded cities, and public opinion could turn dangerous. The individual had little influence over such instability, and so the pursuit of control turned inward. Toward the one domain no tyrant, no soldier, and no misfortune could dominate, the human mind. From this turbulence, Stoicism arose not as an escape, but as a compass for navigating an unpredictable world. It never promised control over circumstances. Instead, it revealed what truly belonged to us. Mastery, it taught, begins not by forcing events to obey us, but by shaping the judgments we bring to those events. The outer world was chaotic, yet our interpretations could be trained and strengthened. Picture a citizen living under a volatile emperor, where a single word could mean exile. Many Stoics officials, advisors, even rulers chose inner steadiness, grounding themselves in a realm no authority could seize. Their writings focused not on politics, but on thoughts, values, and responses. In such instability, self-control became a radical form of freedom. Now we turn to Epictetus, who spent much of his life enslaved under a powerful master before becoming a respected teacher. His journey exemplifies the paradox at the heart of Stoicism. One can have no external freedom and yet possess profound internal liberty. His teachings emphasize that no one can harm us unless we allow their actions to shape our interpretation. The injury we feel rarely comes from events, but from the meaning we attach to them. To Epictetus, mastery of thought was not an intellectual exercise, it was survival. Contrast this with Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful emperor of his time, surrounded by military campaigns, betrayals, and plagues. He could command armies, but he could not command loyalty, health, or fate. His private writings show not the confidence of a ruler, but the vulnerability of a man trying to control his reactions in the face of overwhelming responsibility. To him, the greatest victory was not defeating enemies, but governing himself. Power over others mattered little if it was not accompanied by power over impulses and fears. From here, we turn eastward, where a similar idea emerged in the teachings of Lao Tzu and the Buddha. Both traditions suggested that true control is not force but release, letting go of attachments, resisting the pull of anger, surrendering the need to dictate outcomes. They taught that one can only become whole by ceasing to cling to what does not belong to the self. Instead of tightening our grip on the world, they invited us to loosen the ego's grasp. allowing peace to flow from acceptance rather than resistance. When placed side by side, these philosophies reveal a shared truth. Whether in the West or the East, wisdom pointed toward a boundary that separates what we can influence from what we can merely witness. We may act, choose, and interpret, but we cannot demand that life obey our expectations. We cannot stop others from judging us, stop time from aging us, or force luck to favor us. The only domain that remains consistently within reach is our internal world, thoughts, choices, and attitudes. This recognition shifts the measure of success. Instead of being based on outcomes, it becomes rooted in intention and character. External rewards lose value when they depend on chance. Internal excellence gains value because it depends on discipline. The Stoics did not discourage ambition. They encouraged ambition, directed toward what cannot be taken away. They asked people to pursue wisdom instead of reputation, virtue instead of control, clarity instead of comfort. But there is another layer to this history. The birthplace of self-control was not only violent courts and battlefields, it was also the human experience of suffering. Every person living in those ancient worlds encountered illness, loss, and impermanence. They saw how quickly beauty fades, fortunes collapse, or loved ones disappear. In that fragile reality, attachment to outcomes became a source of constant pain. By learning to release what could not be held, people learned to hold themselves more gently. Consider how this applies today. We no longer fear assassins in public forums, but we fear public judgment online. We do not face invading armies daily, but we face a flood of information that steals our attention and shapes our emotional reactions. Our world does not collapse under sword or plague, but under stress, comparison, and overstimulation. Just like the ancients, we face forces larger than us, and just like them, we must choose whether to suffer under them or master how we respond. From here, we see how Stoic self-control is not about suppression. It is not about eliminating emotion, nor pretending to be unaffected. It is about refusing to let emotion dictate action, to feel anger but not react destructively, to experience fear without surrendering to it, to notice pain without amplifying it through interpretation. This restraint is not stiffness, is wisdom. It allows emotion to be a signal, not a commander. Self-control becomes a form of liberation, not the freedom to escape hardship, but the freedom to remain steady within it. It is the recognition that no matter how loud the world becomes, no matter how unpredictable people behave, you retain authority over your inner state. Thoughts, choices, and attitudes become instruments that shape experience. When trained, they bring stability. When neglected, they cause turmoil. At the core of Stoic wisdom is a simple truth. Life's quality depends less on events and more on how we respond to them. The roots of self-control lie in recognizing that much of our suffering is optional, born from resistance, exaggeration, and expectation. In an uncontrollable world, the Stoics found an inner realm no force could touch. With this foundation, the journey turns to practice. If thoughts shape experience, how do we train them? How do we cultivate peace through daily, intentional action? For Stoic philosophy to have value, it must be lived rather than merely understood. Wisdom that does not shape behavior remains a collection of thoughts, not a transformation of character. Knowing that peace comes from within does not create peace. Knowing how to manage one's mind does not provide stability. It is repeated practice that turns theory into strength, reflection into clarity, and self-control into a natural response rather than an effortful struggle. This is where Stoicism steps off the pages of history and enters your daily life. From here, we turn toward the simplest truth. The world will not adjust to keep you calm, but you can adjust the way you meet the world. The Stoics did not promise an easier life. They showed how to become stronger within the life you already have. They believed that growth happens not during moments of comfort, but during the moments that tempt us to react. Every difficult situation becomes an opportunity to practice mastery over one's mind. Begin by noticing how you move through your work each day. Modern careers may differ from ancient roles, yet the same fears linger: failure, judgment, and uncertainty. Stoic self-control redirects your focus away from these anxieties and toward the task itself. When you work for excellence rather than approval, you free yourself from dependence on praise or recognition. The aim becomes doing your best, not being perceived as the best. Now imagine applying this mindset during conflict or communication. In relationships, the impulse to react quickly can damage trust, escalate anger, or close the door to understanding. Stoic practice invites you to pause before responding, to listen fully without preparing a defense or a complaint. Listening itself becomes a form of self-mastery, allowing space for empathy to replace assumption. When you respond intentionally instead of automatically, you deepen connection rather than feed misunderstanding. Control is no longer a matter of winning an argument, but of choosing how you show up in the moment. But there is another realm where Stoic self-control is often overlooked: solitude. For many, being alone brings discomfort, restlessness, or the urge to distract oneself. Yet the Stoics saw solitude as essential. In quiet moments, the mind has a chance to hear itself clearly, free from the noise of expectations. Instead of filling those moments with screens or constant stimulation, we can welcome them with gratitude. Solitude becomes a classroom where we learn what we truly think, what we truly value, and what we truly want to change. In the stillness we avoid, we often find the clarity we need. From these examples, it becomes clear that self-control is not a single action, but a pattern of choices. The Stoics turned these choices into habits. They treated daily life as training, building discipline one small practice at a time. You do not become calm by accident. You become calm by strengthening your response to life, little by little. The question then becomes, what practices create that strength? The first practice begins in the morning. Before the rush of tasks and messages sets the tone of your day, spend a few moments in silence. You might write down one thing you intend to control, not your schedule or the behavior of others, but a state of mind you want to hold. Perhaps you choose patience, focus, or compassion. This intention becomes a guide, reminding you that your mood is not shaped by events, but by the posture you choose to take toward them. While the morning sets direction, the evening brings reflection. Instead of letting the day end without understanding it, pause to review your reactions. Ask yourself whether you let emotions dictate your actions or whether you paused long enough to choose a response. There is no judgment in this reflection, only learning. If a mistake was made, it becomes a teacher rather than a source of shame. By noticing your mind, you begin to shape it. Daily review transforms experience into wisdom. Between morning intention and evening reflection lies repetition, the quiet force that turns these practices into natural behavior. When repeated consistently, silence becomes strength, patience becomes instinct, and focus becomes a familiar state of mind. Just as muscles grow through repeated effort, the mind grows resilient through repeated stillness. Self-control becomes less about resisting impulses and more about living from a deeper place of awareness. What once felt effortful becomes effortless. There is another important layer. Self-control doesn't eliminate negative emotions, it teaches you how to meet them. You will still feel irritation, anxiety, or disappointment. The Stoics understood this and examined emotions closely. They asked, what belief fuels this feeling? What expectation was broken? What fear was stirred? By questioning your emotions, you create distance space that allows you to respond thoughtfully, instead of reacting impulsively. This shift does not happen quickly. Modern culture values immediate change, quick fixes, and instant results. Stoicism values progress, not speed. Each day becomes one more step toward a steadier mind. Some days you will stumble, reacting impulsively. Other days you will feel proud of your clarity. The goal is not perfection, but persistence. As you practice, you begin to notice that situations that once stirred panic or anger no longer have the same power over you. Instead of being controlled by your mood, you learn to hold steady regardless of the circumstance. From here, imagine what a life shaped by this discipline might become. Setbacks may spark curiosity instead of frustration. Conflicts may be met with steadiness rather than anger. Goals may be pursued with dedication, not fixation. As your inner world strengthens, external difficulties lose their power not because life softens, but because your responses deepen. When you apply Stoic principles to work, relationships, and moments of solitude, when each day is grounded in intention, reflection, and repetition, you begin to live the philosophy rather than simply study it. Self-control shifts from a rule to a natural way of moving through the world with clarity and resilience. With these practices understood, a deeper question emerges. What does life look like when someone truly masters themselves? And how does that mastery reshape their experience of the world? Stoicism is not about suppressing emotions, acting like a robot, or pretending that feelings don't matter. It is not a philosophy of coldness. It is a philosophy of clarity. At its core, Stoicism teaches a skill that sounds simple, but changes everything once we practice it. the ability to choose our response instead of being dragged by our impulses, fears, or anger. When Marcus Aurelius wrote Meditations, he wasn't sitting in comfort or peace. He wrote while traveling with the Roman army, dealing with war, political pressure, betrayal, disease, and exhaustion. He was the emperor of the most powerful empire in the world. Yet he wrote privately about mastering his own thoughts, not controlling others. His power didn't protect him from stress, from difficulty, or from the fragility of human life. It only reminded him how little he could control outside himself. So he trained his mind, not to escape reality, but to face it without losing himself. Centuries later, modern psychology echoes this same truth. Albert Ellis, the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy CBT, famously said that humans are not disturbed by events, but by the way they interpret those events. The Stoics understood this long before it became scientific theory. They knew that external circumstances are unpredictable, but the story we tell ourselves about those circumstances is within our influence. Stoic practice, then, is less about changing the world and more about changing the lens through which we experience the world. Think about how powerful that idea is in our daily life. You can not always choose what happens to you, but you can choose how you receive it. That choice determines your peace, your freedom, your strength, and even your identity. Self-mastery is not perfection. It's not a life where we never feel frustrated, insecure, jealous, or fearful. It is a life where we do not let those feelings dictate who we become. Self-mastery is not about control over the world, it's about control within the world. A person who has mastered themselves does not need to dominate, impress, or intimidate others to feel valued. They don't waste energy trying to predict the future or rewrite the past. They invest their focus into what they can influence, their effort, their character, their actions, and their inner dialogue. It takes strength to stay kind in a world that rewards noise, attention-seeking, and outrage. It takes courage to walk away from drama, not because you're weak, but because you choose not to be controlled by chaos. It takes clarity to say, "This is outside my power, and I won't sacrifice my peace for it." Self-mastery never promises an easier life. Instead, it shapes you into someone stronger than the challenges that rise before you. It cannot prevent storms from forming, nor shield you from every disruption. But it teaches you how to remain steady within the turbulence, carrying a calm the world can neither give nor take away. We live in a time of constant distraction, notifications, arguments, comparisons, opinions, judgments, and noise. Everyone is reacting. Everyone is rushing. Everyone is trying to prove themselves. We measure our worth by how visible we are, how admired we are, how quickly we respond, how loudly we fight back. In such a world, remaining calm is not a sign of weakness. It is a form of rebellion. Choosing silence over impulsive reaction is a powerful act. Choosing thought over anger is an act of resistance. Choosing discipline over ego, patience over outrage, focus over anxiety. These choices separate those who are led by the world from those who lead themselves. Not everyone will understand this kind of strength. Some will confuse it with passivity. Some will assume you don't care. Some will try to provoke you because they don't understand how someone can stand still while everything around them moves so quickly. But you will feel the difference. When you stop being pulled by every emotion, every comment, every insecurity, you begin to realize something transformative. Peace is not something you look for, it's something you create. At the end of the day, Stoicism isn't asking you to become someone else. It isn't trying to change your personality, your dreams, or your values. It is offering you a tool, a way to protect your mind from the chaos outside it. It's an invitation to live with more clarity, intention, and freedom. The question remains, what will you do with the power to master yourself? In a world overflowing with noise, speed, and constant stimulation, you must choose who you want to be. Will you allow every comment, every inconvenience, every unpredictable moment to provoke an automatic reaction? Or will you decide quietly, deliberately, that your responses belong to you and no one else? In a culture shaped by comparison, the choice becomes even sharper. You can live at the mercy of other people's opinions, bending your sense of worth to likes, praise, or criticism. Or you can root yourself in principles that don't shift with public approval. When you choose values over validation, you choose a self that cannot be taken away from you. And in a world rushing forward without reflection, you must decide what force will guide you. Will you move through life on impulse, pulled by every emotion and desire? Or will you be someone who pauses, thinks, and acts with intention? Wisdom doesn't erase chaos, but it gives you a direction through it. It becomes a compass that steadies you, even when everything else feels uncertain. Ultimately, we all shape the person we become not through dramatic transformations, but through the quiet decisions we repeat daily, the tone we use when speaking to others, the thoughts we allow to grow in our mind, the actions we choose when no one is watching. These small choices sculpt character more powerfully than any achievement. So ask yourself with honesty, what kind of person do I want to become? And perhaps even more important, what philosophy will carry me there? The answer doesn't need urgency or noise. It needs honesty, intention, and the courage to take the first step, no matter how small it may be. Mastering yourself is not about becoming perfect. It's a lifelong journey built through small, consistent choices, choosing calm instead of reacting impulsively, choosing understanding instead of anger, choosing trust instead of fear. Every step may seem simple, even ordinary, but each one shapes a stronger, clearer version of who you are becoming. Growth doesn't appear in sudden transformations, it appears in the quiet moments when you decide who you want to be. If this video offered you a new perspective on self-mastery, share in the comments what personal skill or mindset you want to strengthen. And if you'd like to continue exploring the wisdom that helps us live with intention, feel free to subscribe so you won't miss the next reflection. Peace is not a gift from the outside world. Peace is a skill we build one choice at a time.